And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Our next panel, our next talk is a panel about careers in infosec with Fuji,
Hi.
Scaling,
Oh,
and Panda.
Howdy.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. So the goal of this talk is to share experience on what it's like with your career in infosec. So once you got started, how you get in, kind of what you do at the beginning, what you do in the after you've been doing it for a while, and what you're doing when you've been doing it for a long, long time. To share our experiences, share some of the ideas that we have, share some of the. Gosh, I wish I knew when I started what I know now, because I would have maybe made some different decisions. So thank you to the panelists for joining. So I have a set of questions up, sort of set up. Please, if you have questions, put them either in the Twitch chat or in the Discord chat. Scaling there will read the questions off. So if you have access, please do that. Okay, for those of you who have questions. So first question for everybody is, how far have you gotten in your careers? You want to start, Fuji?
I'm still a student, but I'm doing like smaller projects now that help me. Like when I go to class now, I'm like, ha ha ha, I am the smart one. So just starting out, I'm pretty fresh.
Cool. How about you, Scaling?
as of last week, I'm apparently a principal sport engineer. It's been hell, but it's a good time. Still working on some side projects and still trying to learn since I've technically only been in the industry like 3 years, so it's a good time.
Okay. How about you, Panda?
Yeah, I've been in about 10 years, and I feel like the infosec kind of chose me a little bit. I just kind of fell into it. I'm a manager now. I managed basically network and security infrastructure at my company.
Cool. And personally, I've been doing this for about 30, almost 35, more than 35 years. I've done everything. And like you, I kind of fell into it sideways. I mean, I started out as a sysadmin and network engineer way back in 1981. Yeah, 1981. Yeah. And then by 83, I was doing infosec because it was something you had to do back then. There was no distinction in careers. It was if you did network engineering and you did sysadmin, especially Unix sysadmin, you had to do infosec. It was just part of the job. If you ever read Cuckoo's Egg, you'll get an idea of what that was like. The Cliff Stolley book. Anyway, but yeah, so these days I run a research team. We do research into advanced topics in infosec. It's about 30 of us. Anyway, so going back to you, Fuji. Let's actually start with you, Panda. What was your experience? How did you get your foot in the door? You said you kind of it chose you. How did it choose you?
Yeah, sure. So I started on the network side. I used to work for a very, very large bank, and I, came in kind of doing Cisco infrastructure type things. That kind of pushed me, more and more into the security space as I started to work on firewalls and, start to, kind of be involved in like the alerting stream for stuff like that. I moved to the company I'm at now. Basically, on the network side, I came in to fix a lot of the network issues that they were having. And after I went and, re-architected the network, made things better there, by adding redundancies, I freed up a lot of time. And I saw a huge kind of gap in our company's infosec at the time. We were starting to partner with an MSP to kind of manage alerting for our firewalls. And it was one of those things where we started to get hammered, with the various different attacks. And, it was kind of like, oh, we'll trust this partner, put all of your faith in this partner. And I've never been really that person. If I don't understand it, like you can do the work for me, but I want to understand it. So, I kind of dug into infosec harder and harder, and and basically learned how to hack to understand, from a blue team perspective, what was going on in my company. And then through that fell into a kind of red team role as well, where we do internal pen, we test, proof of concept exploits at my company. We'll we do annual assessment, with a third party as well, So it's been a learning experience for sure. And it's every day is different. It's, you're always constantly learning in this field, which is great.
Cool. How about you, Scaeling? How did you end up at infosec or doing infosec?
So the interest has always been there, and that's kind of what kicked off the career. I wanted to learn how to make money while breaking things or trying to steer them. So what ended up happening was, I'm pretty social, so somebody had heard about some of the stuff I was doing early on in my college days, so I ended up getting a mentor, and some of the shit I was looking into, he was like, oh, hey, that kind of applies to this side project I'm working on right now. We're trying to revamp some old school radio tech and replace it with something more modern for remote pump houses in some backwoods part of the country. And they're like, how can we secure communications between the two and get it something more modern? So I did that for a couple months, contract work, and I was still in college, and my professor ended up hearing about that. He offered me an internship with a pretty big cybersecurity vendor, and I decided to take it. And through about 4 months in that internship, they were like, hey, you're doing pretty good. You seem to pay attention and try to learn. So how about a job? And I took it. Probably not the best thing for my college education, because I ended up dropping out to put all my focus on the job, but it worked out since in the field, really, certs and kind of your knowledge is generally a bit more important than a degree. So that's where I've been for the past couple of years now, is right out of the internship, and it's been a blast. And I guess if I really had to say like how it started, being social was the main thing there.
That's I heard how it started. Whereas Panda started because it was interesting, and he had the opportunity at a company he was already working at to take the role. How about you, Fuji? What got you interested?
Getting out of the Navy. To be perfectly honest. No, I've been working on the medical side of everything, and I was burnt out. I was really tired of it, and meeting Patrick was really the catalyst. Just seeing his passion for it, and I was like, oh, well, let me try it. And then he was like, oh, come to DEFCON, and after that, see, DEFCON is your first hit of the drug, and that's it.
Huh. Yeah, for me personally, my story's a lot like Panda's. I didn't intend to be. I mean, I was always a hacker, right? I used to. Now we call it red team, but it wasn't really red team when we did it. I used to break into phone systems and school computers and school lockers and school classrooms. I started lock picking when I was like 14. I started freaking when I was 14 or 15. Yeah, and it continued onward all the way through college. Because it was something fun to do, right? It was a way to, I started freaking because I wanted to call people and I didn't want to pay money. I didn't want my parents to catch me. So that was easy. Surprisingly easy. Freaking is still remarkable. But back in the day, it was remarkably simple. And then lockpicking was sort of a natural outgrowth of that. And then once you could get into a room, the question was, well, what do you do with it? So I had a lot of experience with that end of it at first, right? And the way we first started in my job, I was, like I said, sysadmin network guy. It got started because I was very interested in understanding what people were doing with machines. You'd look at log files, right? And log files are pretty basic back then, but you go, well, why is that person on my machine? And why are they using that much CPU? And what are they up to? Right? And lots of it was just kind of, me being snoopy. But it turned into something really interesting. The tools got better, right? And there was the whole thing with Cliff and Cuckoo's Egg thing that happened at Lawrence Livermore that kind of catapulted a lot of this into actually paying attention, right? These small rounding errors, these small bits that you thought were just errors or maybe not worth noticing, turned out to be the clues and it became like a cat and mouse, search it out game. And I love those things. It's like a puzzle. Right? I think it's what keeps me doing this to this day. Right? It's all just this enormous puzzle where the bad actors, or maybe not even bad actors, keep inventing new ways to make the puzzle more complicated. And like Panda says, you just keep learning new things constantly. Every day I get to work, I'm like, whoa, that's cool, that's scary, that's interesting, and let's go learn. So it's lots and lots of fun. So the point of that experience was that I didn't choose it either, really. It kind of also chose me. So like I said, I got started being a sysadmin doing network work. Now, this is long before there was a distinction between cybersecurity and system support folks, right? In fact, to Scaling's point earlier, being a cybersecurity person these days doesn't necessarily require a college degree. It's interesting. Certifications, it's still so new. Certifications, all those sort of things are they're maybe not quite as valuable as a university degree, but there's no question they get your foot in the door. They get you the interview. They get you the talk. So speaking of that, Fuji, are you interviewing? Are you sending resumes out?
Not yet. Still in the college phase.
Okay. So for you, Panda, what do you plan to? So let's see. Let's go back. I want to start a little bit. Do you remember what day one was like when someone first called you the infosec guy?
It's kind of tough because it's like I said, I kind of came in, on the network side. So day one for my job, at least, I was like a person coming in to replace a person on the, like senior sysadmin side, plus someone who did all the network infrastructure. So day one, I was kind of like the guy, and my network was falling apart. But day one, I guess for infosec was, when I started to kind of notice these gaps in what my company was doing, and notice the gaps in what the partner was doing. And day one for me was really just establishing a team, because infosec isn't just about IT. Like I work day to day with corporate risk, HR, legal, marketing, and I didn't have the executive support back then because they didn't know it was a problem. So making friends within the company, talking to people, making risk understand kind of where we were at, and where our gaps were and how we could fill that. We ended up coming together and creating a leadership committee, to help drive infosec initiatives at my company. And that was really day one, because once you get the business on board, they're going to start spending money. Then you can buy the fancy toys. You can, build out your infosec practice for real, though. So that was probably the biggest step towards getting something real, is engaging the business. I feel like a lot of sysadmins sometimes will complain, but don't do anything about it. And once the business realizes that there's an issue, then they're on board.
I'm going to circle back to that topic about getting the business engaged as part of how you manage your career in just a moment. Hey, Scaeling, what was it like? What was your day one like? Was it anything like you expected it to be?
Oh God, no! It was fire and brimstone. Thought it was going to be like. It wasn't that. I mean, it wasn't really that bad, but I was going in there expecting just, I don't even know. Everything you hear, or see, or read about, people talking about, when you get thrust into, hey, here's like your job, it's like, wait, what? It's a lot more mundane than I thought it would be. At times, sometimes it's you work till midnight, but day one it was cool. I went to the office, and they're like, hey, don't mind this thing that's burning over here. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We can't do anything. It's a dumpster fire. You need to leave the grease fire alone. Just come over here. We're going to have this nice conversation, onboard you about a couple of things we need you to start doing. Here's like some books to read for like some log analysis particular to what I was going to be supporting and securing. And I was just sitting there like, this is a thing that I thought you would be paying a lot of attention to. They're like, nah, it's been there for weeks. Don't worry about it. We got people watching it. And I'm just like, holy shit. It was a lot more casual than I thought it would be too. And I guess if I would have really been to more hacker meetups or DEFCON or anything, you know, around some of the professionals that have been in the industry, I would have realized it's not as straight-laced as I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be, you know, really precise and just a lot of attention to detail. I mean, there is attention to detail. I don't know how to put it. It's just, it's a lot more laid back, at least for where I'm at. And a lot of the partners I work with, it's just generally, if you're dealing with, I don't want to say competent, but you know, if you're dealing with somebody that kind of knows what's going on, they're not as hard to deal with as people that, you know, some CEO that's not scared at all, and he's like, "Ah, just get this fixed now." Wow, and, you know, it's nice, but it does have a lot of stress too, because you might be expecting everything to be laid back, and generally it is, but that kind of hides a lot of stress that you might not otherwise know about, or you might overwork yourself, which is what I've experienced a lot.
Cool. So Fuji, what are you doing to get yourself known? You said you're doing projects and things. How, you know, this is all kind of pre-interview for you, or pre sending out resumes interview. What are you doing?
So for me, it's going to people that are like, I am working on this, and going, hi, I know absolutely nothing about it, but if you tell me how to do something, I'll start with that, and then it just it snowballs into hey, you want to learn how to do this? Well, now you have to learn how to do these things, because we need you to be able to do these things for this project. Or coming up with like small projects of my own, like my DEFCON badge that I'm currently working on, and just learning how to manage a team, b program for different things, c learning how to delegate to different people with different skills, which is apparently a big thing. But it's just starting to get your hands dirty, and asking people, hey, when we're done with this project, I get my name on it, right? And they're like, yeah, put it on resumes, tell people that you worked on this stuff.
So how did you overcome the fear of like walking up to somebody and going, I have no idea what I'm doing. How can I help you? I would think for me, that would be terrifying to do, right? Walking up to complete somebody and go, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't even know what I'm trying to do here, but what you're doing is cool. Can I help? How do you get over that fear?
A big part of it is being with other people that have no clue of what they're doing. Believe it or not, it's finding somebody else who has no clue what they're doing, and you two going together. We have no clue. Let's find somebody who does. That was a big part of it. Or just being able to be in like a room at DEFCON. Like I remember wanting to learn how to pick locks, and me going, I have no clue. I don't want to touch it because I don't want to break it. And just sitting beside somebody and just talking about what they were doing a little bit was ginormous. They were like, oh, you don't know how to do this? Let me show you. It's I feel like everybody in InfoSec wants to teach you something. Like, if nothing else, they want to show you how cool their job is, or they want to show you how to do one particular thing. All you have to do is that one question, and that one question leads to like 50 million pages of explanation, which is really cool.
That's an awesome experience. Cool. So you said you're working on a badge and you're doing some other projects, right? So are you going to publish them? You open sourcing things? How are you turning that into becoming like Scaeling did, right? Scaeling got kind of known for something, and then right, and then that's how they led to the internship, which in turn led to the job, right? How do you intend to make that happen? Or maybe Scaeling, do you have any advice for Fuji on how to make that happen?
Really, I kind of just stumbled into it. For me, it wasn't like that was calculated. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get known, and I'm going to go off. It just kind of fell into my lap, and I rolled with it. If anything, I'd say just putting yourself out there, even when it might not be comfortable, That's a big thing. And also just learning to roll with the blows, because something might not go right, but if you just kind of deal with it, move on, or even if something is going well, just be flexible. That's a great thing. It's like the internship, I wouldn't have gotten that if I wouldn't have, I mean, some not great stuff happened, and I was just going to ignore some of it. And I just said, I'm just going to put up with it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the focus on my career, and it ended up really accelerating my career path. And if I would have been too straight and narrow and just, here's what I'm going to do, and ignored it, it wouldn't have worked out. And then more on the social thing, like, even like I was a social person, but imposter syndrome's a bitch. So a few times it's like, hey, that original contract work I was doing, I didn't fully feel like I was confident enough to do it. They're like, hey, you can totally do this, right? You can architect this and like deploy it. Like, I've seen some of the work you're talking about doing in your side projects. You're totally good for it. And I was sitting there in my head like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? Like, if I mess anything up, everything's going to blow up. And I hadn't done it before. And I just kind of quieted that screaming internal voice in my head. And like, no, just do it. You're totally fine. Unfortunately, to this day, I still deal with that. I guess the proper term is imposter syndrome, but learning to kind of ignore that and realize you're probably already doing better than most other people that may even be tangentially interested to it. If you're putting thought towards it and effort, you're probably fine. As long as you're willing to learn and you're flexible, should be a good time.
How about you, Panda? You've been doing this for quite some time now. How do you deal with that imposter syndrome? Or do you have it? Maybe you don't have it. Maybe you're super confident. You just kind of walk in, stroll in.
Oh no, I've definitely had it. I think the problem is, that we learn so much in our careers that we always have to learn something, and it makes us feel like we don't know all that other stuff. Because we're always having to learn. Like, I don't know, for me, that's at least how I kind of take it, is like, I just forget about all that other stuff I know because I'm focused on, oh man, I got to cram this stuff, down and figure this project out or figure this thing out. I would say the best way to deal with it for me is just make sure I have all my, bases covered, as weird as that sounds. So like, if I'm unsure in myself, I'll get a second opinion. Either from a team member or, I've hired people to give me second opinions on my own work, and like, that I'd say that's a good thing. It's never a bad thing to ask for help. It generally, at least at my company and my experiences with my professional career, I feel like if there's a risk to a large project deployment, anything else, you want to make it known. You want to make sure that, your bases are covered. And sometimes you just doubt yourself and, you end up, digging into it and it's really not as bad. And then you roll through it. But, it's never a bad thing to say, I'm not sure about this, like it's just the way you present it. You know what I mean? You don't want to say like, oh God, I can't do this, but like, if you're uncomfortable, get to a place that you feel comfortable. And I would say the biggest thing for me, actually just thinking about it, is getting to the point that you feel okay feeling uncomfortable, because feeling uncomfortable means you're learning. You always feel uncomfortable when you're learning. And realizing that, making that connection in my head at least, was a really big thing for me, is that, this is trial by fire, sometimes. But it means I'm learning things. I'm not sitting stagnant doing something I did, 3 years straight, so that was a big thing for me to get to, at least.
Cool. Hey, you said something interesting in there. How do you, about where you lean in and where you don't lean in? How did you start to learn what to lean on what not to lean in on? Right? I mean, we're all. I mean, scaling. I'm sure it's the same for you and all of our lives, right? We have multiple challenges that come to us, and multiple possible opportunities to go dig deep and learn. And career-wise, right? You want to try and at least pick the ones that are going to be beneficial for you and your career. How do you start to figure that out? What's the clue?
Interest, at least for me. It's what am I passionate about? If I find myself up at 3 a.m. screwing with a new piece of code or new piece of tech or whatever, I know I want to do more of that. But yeah, that's it for me. It's really just passion.
Cool. How about you, Scaeling? How do you pick the thing to focus on? It sounds like you have a lot of fires going on at, like, for instance, your office.
I'd say passion. For me, like, on top of the whole imposter syndrome thing, burnout is a thing. I have really bad ADHD and a couple other things. So if I'm not really interested in the thing, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it. It's always been that way, even for school. So if I needed to learn something, if it didn't interest me, I couldn't really put the attention to do so, which isn't really a great thing, but it kind of is a bit of a boon, even though it has its own issues. If I am interested in something, I'll stay till 4 a.m. reading on it, or tinkering with it, or doing whatever. So anytime any opportunity comes up to me work-wise, or like a career opportunity or anything, for me it isn't, oh yeah, that could be great for my career, or oh that's like a bunch of money, or here's the opportunity. Is it going to be something I'm happy doing, and does it interest me? Because
Gotcha.
for me, if I'm not interested, I'm not going to put the effort in.
Gotcha.
And so far it's worked out.
So Fuji, as someone from the outside, how does this play in your head? Follow your passion. I mean, does that resonate?
Oh, that rings very true, because I've tried working on some projects that are just boring. It's like, I don't care. I'm sorry. It's this did seem like it's interesting, but now it's not, and I've just shelved them because maybe one day I'll come back to it, maybe one day I won't. But like with certain things that I'm doing now, I'm just like, I must know everything. Like, there's piles of books now. I need a third shelf. But yeah, that definitely, that rings true.
So this idea that you follow the passion.
Mhm.
Panda, how do you? So I know that you like the tech, and you follow the passion. In my career, because we do research, I'm out in a place where there's lots of things. Not lots. There's lots. There's lots of things I just don't understand about what the researchers who work for me are doing. So they're doing a bunch of deep learning stuff, for example, right now, right? Which is super cool, and I've read a book about it, but I couldn't do it, right? I don't have enough experience with it to claim that I could do it. I can keep up with what they're talking about because they're using the language. But I had to make a decision somewhere along the way to go, okay, I don't have to know exactly what they're doing. I just need to know that they're kind of on track and that their goals are in the right place. I became, because like I said, I have guys doing deep learning. I have guys doing things on, quantum safe encryption. I have guys doing things on what's another good example? I have one guy who does statistical analysis on things that I'm never going to understand the statistics, the math behind those statistics. To identify anomaly, right? It's really interesting to me how I've had to shift. Like, so I can still do networking in my head. I can still do BGP. I can still do all these things in my head, and I love them, and I still play with them, and I find myself at 3 a.m. goofing with that stuff. But I don't goof with things that have to do with deep learning at 3 a.m. But it's becoming increasingly part of what we do. So I guess my point is that I see our infosec is lots and lots and lots of little things, each with rising, sort of, some of them rise up at different times. Like, I think, deep learning ML has become a big deal in infosec, or it's becoming a bigger deal in infosec, right? How do you navigate that? Anybody want to take the question? How do you navigate as this field changes as quickly as it does, and as constantly as it's doing, which is why it's so damn interesting? How do you go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like you're talking more about leadership, as you start to, move into a leadership role, you delegate, certain things. And it's okay that you don't understand stuff to that point, because you have subject matter experts that can explain it to you, and you work with them and partner with them and trust them, because they're part of your team.
Yeah, but how do you even know what? So even from that perspective, How do you? Maybe it's a general question for everybody. How do you keep up with the changes in infosec as a job or as a career?
For me, it's podcasts. Podcast events. I really just like being social, whether it's local or going to conferences, across the country. I lean pretty heavily on my network and the media that I consume. And honestly, infosec Twitter, for general updates about what's going on.
Okay. How about
I'd say
you, Scaeling?
similar. For me, yeah, a couple of podcasts, just reading up on some neat articles or releases that have been done. And then I'm in a bunch of group chats, forums, and places like that, like, the DEFCON Furs Telegram, hey, shout out. But, somebody might be talking about something really neat, and it's like, wow, okay, I've heard that mentioned somewhere. I don't really know anything about it. And so I'll just go read into it a bit more. If it's not super interesting, I'll try to read up enough so I'll have at least a basic understanding of the thing. That way, if it comes up in the future, I mean, Google Foo is a big part of being an infosec professional, I think. So there's no way you're going to know everything. But if you index, hey, here's kind of what it is, and then you know how to look for more information on it when it comes up, that's generally a good thing. And then also the in-person meetups, like Panda said, for example, where I'm at, there's the Dallas Hackers Association. Every first Wednesday, they have a meetup, and I'll go to that, and they generally have a bunch of talks. People talk about, hey, here's this cool thing I did, or something that's going on right now. And then in addition to the talks, there's just a whole bunch of people that are all in the community that are talking about, here's this neat thing, here's that. You can kind of scope out the current feel of the industry and kind of what's going on, even if you don't necessarily know fine details and everything.
Cool. Fuji, have you participated in any of the local hacker groups down where you live?
Right now I'm in my school's club. That's what we do, and I'm trying to find the hacker group that existed at one point, but then I lost track of them because COVID decided to wipe out everything. But hopefully, because there are smart people that can help me with my other projects. Big brain need.
Panda, you go to hacker groups, right? And meetups.
Yeah, so we have I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. So I go to the 2600 meets here. I go to OWASP. I go to DC 904, which is the local DEFCON group. I've also gone to a bunch of the DEFCON meets in Tampa and Atlanta. I'm kind of all around. I like B-side events. B-sides is great. I have gone to a ridiculous amount of B-sides events. Yeah, awesome at this point. And I honestly, when I'm helping people getting into the industry, we have a career practicum at my job, and I always recommend all of those groups. They're great.
Can anyone describe what it was like the first time they went to one of these things, whether it was a DEFCON event or a B-sides or a local hacker group meetup? I want to share some experience, like when you walked in, what did it feel like? What was it? What did you do? How did you get over that hump? It's a big energy hump to get over to actually show up at one of these things.
For me, the first time was DEFCON 2019. Honestly, a good portion of why I was going to DEFCON was I heard about the DEFCON Furs group by one of my buddies, and he's like, hey, so you're kind of like into security and hacking and stuff. And you also have like this weird Fox thing. Like, I don't know what that's about, but I've heard about this thing on the internet. Like, here you go. And I'm like, oh, wow, there are other weirdos like me in the world. Great. And that's kind of how DEFCON went. I, got into Vegas. I'm like, man, okay, this is neat. And then I walk in, it's like, again, that whole thing. Wow, there's other weirdos like me that are into this cool stuff. It was a bit overwhelming because there's, so many different villages to go see, people to talk to. But the environment was really nice. I liked the environment. I liked the people, and that's why I'm still sticking with it.
Cool.
And I will say real quick, we did get 2 questions. Zara was asking for any podcast recommendations. So while we're kind of close to that topic, if anybody had anything for that.
Panda?
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. I really like Darknet Diaries a lot. There's another one that I just started kind of listening to. It's just a British security podcast called Smashing Security. I think they're really kind of hilarious. Um, there's Breaking Down Security, I believe is the name of the podcast. I think it's with a AKE. I think it's his last name. There's the SANS Internet Storm Center, which I listen to practically every day, which is Johannes Ulrich's podcast.
Mhm.
He's actually a local here, so I get to see him at InfoSec events here. Really awesome guy. But yeah, there's some podcast recommendations.
If you could, Panda, if you could type them into the Discord.
Yeah, I definitely can. And actually, here's another one too. Malicious Life is a sponsored podcast. I think
What's
Norton
that?
or someone sponsors it. But just so you guys know, they've done a series of episodes lately on DEFCON, on ThoughtCon, on a bunch of like the history of InfoSec cons, which is a great series I recommend.
Cool. How about you, Scaeling?
Pretty much all the ones I listen to have already been listened to or listed. There's a couple I just heard about that I haven't actually heard about elsewhere, so those will be some ones to look at. Darknet Diaries is, I think, the one that I listen to the most. Also, not necessarily podcasts, but also Offensive Security has been putting out some media off and on for a while now. They have a Discord server, and they sometimes have some speakers and some talks, some media to check out there too.
Cool. Fuji, anything you want to add?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll go click on some of the links that Panda puts in the Discord. Scaling, what was the other question?
The other question was somebody else was dealing with imposter syndrome and not great management potentially. So the question is, what can they do to help navigate bad managers?
That's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save that question if we could for the last 15 minutes of the talk, because it'll take the full 15 minutes of this panel. There's an endless sea of advice on how to manage managers. While we're doing that, though, in those 8 minutes between now and the last 15 minutes of the talk, if you could give us some detail on the situation, that would definitely help us provide better advice. I don't know the name of the questioner.
Isatis?
Oh, Isatis, yeah. If you could, I said if you could put in a little bit of context, that would really help. And then we'll come back around to it. Okay. So now that you've been doing it for 3 years now, right? Scaling, you've released about. Is it anything like you thought it was going to be from when you started, or like when you were doing the interview? How is it different than what the interview was like? What you thought it was going to be?
I didn't realize how much on-the-fly learning there'd have to be. I always thought, okay, you're gonna learn most what you need to know at the start, and then you're gonna kind of ride on that. And maybe as some new things come out, you'll learn something new, or you'll need to go learn something else, or hey, maybe AWS has this weird new technology that you need to learn because, by the way, you're gonna support it. It's like, okay, sure. In reality, just like Panda said earlier, every day I pretty much learn something new, which is great because I love to learn, but it's not what I thought would be the case. I thought it was going to be kind of monotonous, same thing every day, kind of get into a groove, and it's not really that at all. At least where I'm at in the infosec field, every day there's either a new threat coming along that needs to be addressed, or hey, maybe that ransomware game just hit somebody that you're supporting and now everything's on fire. So being flexible is important, but I didn't realize to what degree that would really be and how much time would need to be dedicated to learning something. You probably don't actually have to do that, but anytime anything new is brought up during work or somebody's talking about some other new tech or some other exploit or something, I'll generally just make a note of it. I have a big note sheet that I keep, and if I hear anything interesting, I'll just read into it after work, and that's where a lot of my free time goes now, is just trying to learn. I thought, hey, I'm done with college, let's just get in and work, and it's basically just college plus at this point.
Cool. Hey Panda, when you said you kind of got buy-in, right? You built a kind of team, you built a kind of consensus, you got buy-in. Are you doing today? Are you doing anything? How much of what you originally got bought in to do are you continuing to do today?
Oh, all of it. It's
Okay.
been, yeah, it's been a race to. Yeah, I think we're mature now, which is great. But it's always new things. Lately, it's been basically extending our controls to third parties. So we've done like SOC 2 audits on a lot of our third parties that we work with. We live in a cloud world, so that was a pretty big thing. But now we're actually looking to utilize exchanges to do compliance work, which is interesting. It gives us a lot more visibility into our third parties and their financial risk as well as their technical risk. That's been kind of what we've been expanding into lately. And then also I've been working on I want to do more Ansible. So I'm looking at automating baselining, like CIS benchmarks across my environment. So there's fun new stuff every day, basically. Always continuing.
Cool. I know for me, right? I thought it was going to be like analysts, what we now call an analyst. Back then I used to call it cops and robbers. Right? I thought I'd be a cop for most of this because it's fun, right? It's like fun to find the bad guy and try and figure out what the bad guy's up to and do the kind of stuff like, I don't know, like you see in a movie, right? And if you watch, 80s movies about hacking and infosec, I kind of wanted my career to be like that. And for me personally, it became all these other things, right? It became a lot about tech, deep understanding of tech. I read more. I wrote a bunch of code once upon a time, and I read more code than anything else. Right? I read about tools to manage code. I read about tools to manage infrastructure. The whole thing about securing infrastructure as a service is fascinating. For example, you're talking about Ansible, right? How do you secure Terraform probably as well? How do you secure that? How do you build the tools around that? None of that I expected to do at any point, right? And it's been interesting how it's evolved the way it has, and how it continues to evolve. So the thing about you said earlier about wanting to continue to learn and realizing that being uncomfortable and feeling like you're not the expert, right? You may have an expert, you may be expert at this little tiny segment of it, that goes from between my fingers there. When the field to learn is, my fingers have to go off the screen, right? But feeling that kind of always kind of on edge learning has been continuous. Even when I go back to old things, honestly. So like go back to like setting up networks. The way we set up networks is wildly different than it was 20 years ago. The way we build network infrastructure is completely different than 20 years ago. It feels like. And so that, I used to be an expert in that, and I'm not the expert anymore. And relearning it is fun too. So I guess the point is you have the opportunity to go back to things you thought you knew and learn more about them because they continue to evolve. So one of the questions I had for the panelists was, what was the most essential skill that you possess for your success that's gotten you to where you are right now? And I think Panda, you mentioned, and maybe you'll say the same thing if I ask the question again, is the willingness to keep learning and to continue learning and realize that learning is just part of it. But is that the skill you think is the most essential for your success so far?
Yeah, that and communication, organization. I feel like I didn't actually go to college, so I feel like high school definitely did not prepare me to manage many projects at once and try to communicate with a bunch of people. And I don't even know if college does that, but I definitely struggled coming in, and having to kind of pick up those skills and figure out, how to take good notes and relay information in general. I'd say that that's a super important skill, and that when I did the OSCP last year, that was one of the most important skills for being able to effectively do it, was just managing the fire hose of information and taking good notes.
Well, I have a question. How many people on this call who on the call has a college degree? There we go. So we got 2 on the call and 2 who don't. Just interesting to ask the question. Did either one of you get a degree in infosec or cybersecurity or computer science?
Working
Computer
on it.
science for me, but
Okay, computer science.
yeah.
How about you, Fuji?
Working on my cybersec right now.
Okay, just asking. I'm with Panda, right? I don't have the degree, and I went to college, but I don't have the degree. So Panda, your question: college doesn't teach you how to be a good
No, it does not.
communicator.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it teaches you how to be a good note taker.
No,
Oh,
it
God,
does
no.
not.
Well,
No.
my I guess perspective of the college world got turned upside down a little bit recently because I've been watching a little bit of the full stack deep learning, the UC Berkeley courses they open sourced, and it's like
Yep.
that is a really crazy environment. Like those people are super smart. Like that would have been a cool place to go. I can't imagine like a local college or something here would have been anywhere near a similar experience.
Yeah, no, you're right. That group of folks are very, very smart, and it's also kind of scary, but exciting at the same time. So going back, how about you, Scaling? What's the one skill you think is the most essential skill for your success so far?
Being able to learn quickly, that I think that's above anything else. Like I've had to been pulled on a meeting before where it's, hey, the meeting's going to be on this thing, and you're ready for that. And you're like, all right, great. Meeting starts, and they're talking about something completely different that I know almost nothing about, and it's like, great, okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go make a cup of tea or coffee or something, and I'll just mute. But what I'm really doing is looking like, yo, what is this? What do I do? Is there a resource I can pull on, like a side chat and talk to? Like, what's going on? So being quick to learn or quick to just pick up on anything and adapting is, I think, the most important thing, at least for me.
Cool. Hey, Fuji, what's the skill you wish you had?
That's actually a very interesting question. I think the biggest skill I wish I had was being able to delegate, being able to delegate a lot better than I do.
Okay.
Oh, I just thought of one too, Steve. Setting
that?
expectations, like actually setting real expectations, like whether or not it's this gets done now or this gets done next week because I don't have time for you. But constantly trying to deliver on what you tell people and set realistic goals and expectations.
Yeah, I'd agree with that last one. I agree with both of them. What you just said, appropriate delegation or levels of delegation is really difficult to do, especially if you don't feel like you understand the full set of the problem. It's really hard to delegate if you don't. And the other one is, you're right, effective expectation setting. I think this is career in general, right? But especially in infosec, or tech-related sort of things, being able to set expectations realistically is really important. We have a tendency to expect everything in tech to go fast, right? You click buttons and it happens, and you do this and it happens, and your build cycle is now continuously integrated. I mean, all this junk just sort of happens all the time now, and there's not this sense that it can take days or weeks or months, right? And so I think we walk into a lot of situations with these unrealistic both time expectations and scope, right? Just because you say you're going to secure a service, you may be talking about something very different, right? Than or overlap some Venn diagram version of what the person you're talking to thinks securing that service means. It's because the field is so broad. I find that it happens a lot, actually. That we'll talk about securing services, and they're like, so you thought you were going to be checking for input validation, right? Important thing to do on an API call, right? I thought I was building TLS around it. Someone else in turn was thinking that they're making sure that the container it's running in is running with only the exact libraries that it needs and nothing else. And right? It's this whole big stack of stuff. So clear expectation setting becomes really important.
And that's where controls come in. Sorry, you
Yep.
have to have controls to be able to do that job.
Right. because it is so broad, right? Fuji, you about to say something?
I think that I do know one important skill that you need to have. It's saying I don't know. I think that's one of the biggest skills that I currently have right now, is just being able to go, you know what, I have no idea what you're talking about. Scale it down a bit.
Yep. It's really important advice. Hey, we're now at 10 minutes before the end of the hour. Do we have any more questions come in? I want to make sure we get around to questions.
No, there were a few other things that were pointed out, like being able to try and communicate with your managers, supervisors better is a great skill. But I think the main question we still have pending is the one, how to deal with bad managers. I think that ties in with some of the discussion that's been going on in there too.
Yeah.
Well, what makes them bad? That's the tough part. You know, like if we figure out what makes them bad, I can tell you how to deal with them.
Well, it's easy. This is what you do. You get a Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
It's fair.
I know for me personally, a manager, I used to have a manager, this was years ago, who would have like 1,000 ideas every 5 minutes and expect you to kind of track all 5,000 of those ideas. You talk to them for a 5-minute call and they'd come up with 1,000 ideas a minute, which is, they would talk really fast. And you'd have this long list of things. And the hardest part for me with that situation, honestly, was going, which one of these do you actually want us to do? And when I first got the manager, I know that for a couple months, I was just trying to make notes. I would like scribble furiously, right? And after a couple months and I got to know them, I was like, okay, really great ideas. Which one do you want us to work on first, and when do you want it done? Right? Because we'll go work on whatever it is you want us to work on. You're the manager, right? But it was like that conversation that had to take place, because otherwise it was, from a fire hose, right? And you didn't know which drop of water was the one that was going to be the one that put out the fire. And it was kind of nuts. I had a manager like that once. I had a manager once who tried to tell me how to do everything I was doing. I don't know if any of this is ringing true, Isa, or resonating. The manager who tried to do everything I wanted to do, I actually changed managers. I gave up. Ultimately, I believe that it was a trust issue. They didn't trust that I was able to get the job done, and so they were trying to be helpful. Learning that part was very valuable. I didn't really learn that, though, until I changed managers. I went back and thought about more what they were doing and how they were acting and what they were saying, and I realized, oh, they were trying to be helpful. They were just doing it in a way that was pissing me off, right? Like royally pissing me off, like getting all up in my stuff. And the new manager, it wasn't talking to the new manager, just kind of just looking back at some of the things they were trying to do. And I went, oh, I see what they were trying to do. I didn't like it, but at least I started to appreciate the intent. And sometimes that's very difficult, is understanding someone else's intent, especially once you've started to mistrust them. You mistrust a manager, it goes sideways really, really quickly. At least for me.
Two of the manager types they pointed out, well, this one's from Twitch Chats, how to deal with managers that don't like being outshined by their employees. And the other one to elaborate on Ista's manager is, how do you deal with a manager that's trying to say you're not doing enough, or maybe they have some issue with like the scope of what you're doing, and just off the wall criticism that isn't really that valid, I guess you could say.
Hey Panda, you're a star. I know you're a star at work. How do you deal with the managers who you're outshining?
I don't know that I have that problem, because we're a team. I don't really think of it like that. I want to, make my management, I want to make their goals, my goals, and then, pulling the stuff that I'm interested in, into that, leadership committee, building that, now they're the business's goals, so it's my boss's job to deliver on goals that, we have educated the business on, that, came up with the, those objectives with our guidance. So, we are really all on the same team. I don't really have those issues at my job at least, which is good. I did want to just mention about the the specific issue with dealing with a manager that where was it? So it was sorry, the specific type of manager. What was the one that they were saying? It was manager that's working with you versus one who's saying you're not doing enough. So that kind of goes back to the same thing. It sounds like that person doesn't communicate enough with their manager, and that their manager maybe doesn't understand their problems. And it's possible that they have problems that don't align with the business's problems that they're supposed to be solving, that are taking up more of their time. It's possible that the manager doesn't really understand the priority, or maybe that person's priorities are different than their manager. I would say they really just need to talk more and explain to their manager kind of where they're at and why they're struggling getting X thing done. And I feel like in IT we do a lot behind the scenes, and management doesn't see that. So if they don't know, they're going to keep throwing more work on you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, right? They don't know what we're doing. I spend a lot of time. A huge part of my day actually is doing something that's always slightly uncomfortable, which is sort of trumpeting and sharing the great work that we do, right? To the management team, especially to people several levels up, right? Saying, hey, look, we're really wonderful, and we do these wonderful things, and you don't get paid. We don't, we get paid. We appreciate getting paid. We're not asking for more money. We're just asking for some recognition that this great stuff is happening. That's a good point. So I don't know if that helps, Isa, but that's your. Oh, I see another point that Isa just brought up. That's really interesting. What do you do when someone tells you, Scaeling? You're probably good at this one. You've just had this experience. You're not working at the level we expect from a senior security engineer.
Oh man. Well, I'm doing my best. I don't know. Communicating with them, I guess is key, which has already been stated. But hey, maybe you're not doing enough. It's well, hold on a minute. You just gave me the workload of I don't know, 4 people, and what do you expect? You can only do so much as a person, and if you can either choose to just sit there and try and do it and then fail, or you can be hold up, this isn't it, this isn't going to work, and then have a dialogue with them, look, here's what's happening. I don't know what else you want. Just do your best, I guess. Obviously, you got to be cordial about it, but it's a give and take thing for any career. You shouldn't just let your employer walk on you, but there are going to be points and times where everything is going to be on fire and every body is going to have to be all hands on deck. But if you're not communicating that with your manager, they won't even know that you're feeling buried. They might just be piling more and more work, and you're over here drowning. And if you're not saying anything, it's just going to keep happening, and it's not a good time.
Absolutely.
Also, if you want help, you have to tell them how to help you. Because if your manager doesn't even understand what you're doing, they're probably not going to know how to help you with the problem. So, you can't be oh, well, go, try this proof of concept exploit code against this thing that we have and see if, we are still vulnerable even after we patch, I'm not going to get that kind of help from my CISO or whoever, so, you could always tell them, I need more resources. I need this tool. I need this thing. If you give them problems that they can solve to help you solve their problems, they're probably on board with it.
Right. We have a minute left, and there's a good question that came up. So how did you get Scaeling or Panda, whoever wants to go first, how did you get your last promotion? What'd you do?
For me, it was just being there. Part of it was people started going back to the office, and I was there and I was seen. And even when that wasn't in the office, just being seen and making yourself known. If it does come time where, hey, we need a guy to do this, if they don't know about you in the org, you might be doing really well, but if they don't know that, you're not going to be the one that they put up to get promoted or go work on a thing. So I'd say visibility is a big thing.
How about you, Panda?
I just talked to my boss about it. I was managing the entire security practice, and I was still under like an engineering role, as far as title goes. So, I constantly push management in that regard. And that's one of the more difficult things at my company, because they're not a tech company. So, our pay structure is very different in IT, and, showing the business the returns on, their investments into tech is challenging. But yeah, that's really how, to tell your management, you think you deserve more money if you think you deserve more money.
So we're out of time, and I apologize, we're running a little bit long. The group of us, if you guys can move over to the Discord, we'd be happy to answer some more questions on Discord. Hopefully for those of you in the audience, you had a good time and found something interesting in all of this. Please feel free to join us in the Discord. We can answer some more questions. I can stick around for another bit here, and hopefully the rest of my panelists are able to as well. So thank you very much, Fuji. Thank you, Scaeling. Thank you, Panda, for sharing your experience in InfoSec and your careers. And hopefully the audience got something out of it, some ideas and some suggestions and some opportunities. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.